From inclusive finance to sustainable economies, Africa is building its future. This is The Sound of Progress, a podcast by FSD Africa. This is Financing Africa's Future.
Hi everyone, and a warm welcome to the FSD Africa podcast. We're really excited to do this. We've wanted to do it for quite a long time, and I'm really glad to see it come to be. And what a better way to start it than have Reshma Shah with us, the lead of carbon markets, a strand of work at FSD Africa. We are really glad to have you, Reshma.
Thank you, Kaara. And it's really good to see that I'm the first one on the podcast too.
Maybe let's just jump a bit and try to start this from the basics. You telling us what role you currently play at FSD Africa.
I'm the lead for the Carbon Center of Expertise at FSD Africa.
Yes.
And what that entails is really about how do we driving the carbon strategy in line with our overall strategy as FSD Africa to really provide catalytic interventions in financial markets. So what we see is our role in terms of how we can leverage carbon markets to actually do that catalytic change in financial markets. So my role is, once we've agreed the strategy, is how do we actually implement that strategy? And more importantly, how do we integrate it within all the other activities that are happening within FSD Africa. Building strong partnerships and relationships. Carbon markets has a number of different stakeholders. It's fast moving, keeping up with all the changes that are happening, and what does that mean for us and our work, and ensuring that we're building the capacity of the key stakeholders with which we work with in carbon markets.
Wow, fantastic. Let's step back and ask a very basic question. What are carbon markets, and why are they really important for us and to care and think about them?
So carbon markets are systems in which you can buy and sell carbon credits, which is basically a unit in terms of reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. They have become quite a powerful tool in terms of how we can meet our climate change requirements and the Paris Agreement of being under 2 degrees Celsius. To date, the capitalization of carbon markets equates to over $200 billion globally. And not only are they a tool in terms of climate change, they can effectively be a tool for really driving development in a region. Carbon comes from areas like energy, comes from areas like how we conserve our blue economy, comes from what we do around nature. All of those are fundamental elements that relate to not just livelihoods, but also development.
Wow, sounds interesting and really great to hear that FSD Africa is planning to go big on carbon and carbon markets. But I would imagine that FSD Africa has been involved in far much more, climate finance and green finance even before now.
Yeah, so we have a much broader agenda as FSD Africa in terms of green finance, and that equates to from starting with early stage finance all the way through to capital markets in terms of the larger transactions. And we're also looking at elements on investments, as well as how can we increase adaptation and resilience. So climate finance, green finance has been embedded across the board for FSD Africa. And we have been catalytic in some of the work that we're doing around giving grants. We have been responsible for a number of bonds and sustainable green bonds that have been issued in Africa. And we see carbon sitting within that as just another climate solution within an ecosystem of solutions.
Fantastic. Where carbon markets is a conversation we've had for some time. As a continent, where would you rate us? Where are we? Are we advanced? Are we in a midpoint? Are we just starting? Are we just getting our acts together?
So as a continent, we have significant resources, whether you're looking at land, whether you're looking at oceans, whether the capacity for actually bringing in new energy sources and renewable energy sources. But we're definitely a mark on the global scale. We have seen a significant increase in carbon credits coming from Africa. We've seen a number of countries across the continent actually start or have put in place the right regulations and policies for carbon markets. They're building capacity of their authorities to be able to manage this. And we're seeing a number of both large and small project developers actually establishing themselves here. But when you look at a 2%, you might look at that as, well, we're not far, but I look at it as 98% of potential.
Is it that because we are quite early in the journey, or is it that we are facing some unique challenges and impediments that we need to work around?
There are a number of challenges that we are facing. There's a lot of lack of regulations or irregularity of the regulations. We do have challenges in terms of the flow of capital into the continent from climate perspective, not just from a carbon perspective. We also have issues around elements of our capacity for local project developers, the methodologies that we use. And that also creates an issue around the pricing that's given to African carbon credits as well. But these are challenges that we have looked at as FSD Africa, and we have looked at where are we in terms of those challenges, who else is addressing some of those challenges, and where is it that we can play a part in those challenges. So I would say that as much as a challenge is there and there are blockers, given that we know what those challenges are, and if we can try and address them, we can actually access the 98% potential that's waiting for us to access.
I think that's quite encouraging. It creates the sense that there are challenges yet, but you have a very good feel of where they are and what can be done. And I think, as you say, then we should be able to make good progress and be able to exploit the huge untapped potential. And just listening to you speak, Reshma, seems to me that for carbon markets to really take off in Africa, it's doable, but then it's the kind of task that needs a lot of hands on the table. Sounds like there's work for regulators, developers, financiers. Seems like there's quite a lot for almost everybody.
There is a lot, and it's important that when you look at carbon markets, that you focus on the whole value chain relating to carbon markets. And this value chain analysis also has to be done at a sectorial level to really understand who are the key stakeholders that can drive carbon markets. So there you've mentioned some. You've got the regulators, you've got the financiers, you've got the project developers, but you've also got the standard bodies, the international standards that can actually help us in terms of increasing the integrity of these carbons. And it's really about understanding where each of these stakeholders are coming from, what are their challenges, what are their opportunities, mapping that out and actually coming together to find a solution that cuts through that thread. Now, again, as much as there are stakeholders that are involved in the value chain, there are equally a lot of stakeholders that are engaged in terms of how do we resolve some of those challenges. And the question is, even then, as one of them, as FSD Africa, how do we come together as well and look at where the gaps are in those challenges, and how can we basically optimize on those and use a systemic way in terms of what we found a solution in one country, how can it elevate that to more regional, to other countries. We shouldn't be starting at point zero at every country in that level. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I would say there's a lot of willing stakeholders who see the challenges. There are a lot of willing stakeholders who are also skeptical about and you need both. You do need both to be able to really address what is the real challenge and what is the real solution to it. And therefore, a lot of times when we're engaging on these matters, they get quite interesting, and you'll get different views, but all of those actually take us forward in terms of what we want to try and achieve.
Let me just step back and pick on two issues you've spoken about. The first one is, of course, we need someone in the middle who is collaborating and bringing all these people together. And traditionally, FSD Africa has been playing that role very well in a lot of development finance. Do you foresee us continuing to do that in the carbon space, sitting in the middle and speaking with the different actors and trying to drive the sort of synergy that we need?
Yeah, we are doing that. We have started doing that, and it's definitely doing that from both a regulatory perspective and in terms of how can we increase some of those frameworks. We're also doing that and currently talking to a number of different parties around how can we come together very soon this year and actually have a roundtable around what are we doing as individual organizations, where are the synergies, where are the gaps, how can we escalate that, and the beauty about what we do as FSD Africa is we don't go at it on our own. We look for key strategic partners that we can work with. And that's what we're currently doing. We're having those engagements with key strategic partners. We're using the strengths that each of us bring to the table to collate all the different stakeholders and to actually be able to find a way forward for us as a continent.
Are we winning the naysayers? Are people getting convinced? Are people seeing the utility of carbon markets? And are we building and more or less procuring that broad consensus about the role and part it can play to drive our climate finance?
I would say that whatever has informed the naysayers, there is a lot of truth to some of that as well. And that's the first acknowledgement, that they are skeptical, they have raised concerns, and a lot of those are valid concerns. The question is then, how do we learn from those? How do we develop those? The biggest challenge we've had, or the biggest kind of problem, is integrity of those carbon. Are the benefits going to the right people, or are they not going to the right people? Yes. All of those are aspects that really need to be looked at. Are these really genuine? Is there greenwashing elements in there? Are we really doing something that's right from a carbon, from a nature perspective, from a livelihood perspective? All of those are genuine concerns. And I would say through promoting the work that's being done properly, promoting and actually using that as a force to bring more organizations to work in that way. The regulations that are being put in place are actually assisting with that. Organizations like ourselves that are saying we're not just interested in carbon market, we're interested in high value, high integrity carbon markets because of the impact that it has beyond climate. All of those are forces that are going to assist to carry along some of the naysayers as well. Will we get 100% of them? No, we're not going to get 100% of them. Are they helping us in terms of really trying to understand the challenges and are pushing us to address them? Yes. And so I'd say, are we winning? I'd say we have enough to say that we are on a winning track, but there's still a lot more that we can do.
You really seem very focused on what you're trying to do, Reshma. I'm wondering, what's your ambition in the carbon market program for FSD Africa? What are you planning to achieve in the short term and in the long term?
When you look at that overarching, we need to scale up investments. We need to look at what are the enablers for doing that. There are key elements behind that in terms of having the right regulations, ensuring that we have international and local demand that's pulling the supply, that we have the investments going into the supply side,
yes.
That those projects are sustainable because they do more than just carbon. They're actually providing energy for other industries. They're conserving nature for the future. So that's my ambition of what we would like to achieve. And I believe that's very aligned to what FSD Africa is trying to achieve across the board. So I'm not pulling in a different direction. I'm just helping to pull the whole agenda forward in the same way, but just with a carbon focus.
As we draw to a close, I wanted to ask you about a program I saw you launch towards the end of last year, the Carbon Accelerator program for the environment. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and what you're trying to achieve there.
Sure. So the Carbon Accelerator program for the environment, as we call it, CAPE, we launched it towards the end of last year. And what we're looking for is taking up to 5 projects through to financial close over the next 12 months. The key thing about these projects is they should have a carbon element, but they should also have a key biodiversity element. So we're looking at both climate and nature together. So where we are at the moment, we put out an expression of interest for projects.
Yes.
And these are projects based in Africa. we had over 100 different applicants.
There was such a huge turnout.
Huge turnout, good spread of projects, good geographical spread of projects as well. From what we've heard from other accelerators, that is quite a number. The challenge now for us is how do we sieve through those applications. So what we had decided is we didn't want to put an onerous requirement on projects. We did a very high level expression of interest, and the projects that were successful have gone through to a second level of that expression of interest where we can engage in the detail in a lot more. So that's the stage that we're in right now. We're evaluating the second stage of the expression of interest, and we're seeing some super projects. We are thinking about what else can we do for the projects that are not successful to be part of CAPE. So I think this is going to be a project where it's going to not just enhance what we do, but it's going to give so much learning that we would like to share externally as well. So a big component of CAPE is going to be what we're calling a living lab, which is going to be a resource base for learnings for different organizations, different accelerators as well. We've had a lot of interest from other accelerators. So CAPE is one of the projects that I am super excited about this year, not just to see these projects through, but to see what else is born from CAPE.
I mean, I think that's quite awesome. First, to hear of the huge turnout of the people who've responded to your EOI, and then to hear, you have projects from every corner of the continent, and I think it's really exciting time to see that we are having, coming from a time we didn't have many carbon projects, that now we are having many proposals and planning coming from every part of our continent, and we really wish you well in that. That's quite exciting. Any other thing we expect from the carbon markets for you now that you've started on such a strong note in 2025?
Well, expect us not to stand still, I should say. The whole carbon space, it's just constantly evolving and changing, and international dynamics and local dynamics. And expect us to do the same and keep up with that, because what we ultimately want to do is actually not just do the work, but do work that leads to something significant. So expect us to keep evolving as carbon markets evolve.
Awesome. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Reshma, and I think you are doing such important work. We wish you well with that, and we can't wait to sit down with you a couple of months down the line and just to hear where some of these ideas are leading. But I think this is such important work that you're working on.
Thank you, Kaara. So now the pressure's on me to make sure in a couple of months' time that I
I
have a lot more that I can talk about.
When we sit here 6 months from now, we want to hear where all these exciting projects that are starting now will be hopefully maturing or progressing.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Challenge on.